Hi everyone. My microphone is not working. Thank you very much for joining us in the third ArchiTalk today. We have our third guest lecturer and ArchiTalker, Neil Cownie, today with us. I have actually stolen part of his profile from the website. Feel free to navigate the website. Neil Cownie, architect, is just really fascinating and impressive. So Neil has 30 years of experience as an architect, and he has established his own practice in 2009. So he will focus on projects that bring him and his clients joy and delight. From large-scale master planning down to the intricate details that elevate each project beyond the everyday. Neil brings wisdom and experience to his practice. He maintains close connection with his clients throughout the life of each project to ensure the final outcome exceeds their expectations while remaining within budget. So I guess without any further delay, I'll just hand in to Neil to introduce yourself, please, more, and we're looking forward to listening to your project.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
I believe it was off. It's come back on. I believe that it is the sum of the history of your life experiences that influences the work that you produce. Once you've accumulated many experiences and become comfortable with this, you can then reflect and allow this inevitable outcome to serve you with reason in your own work. So now, by example, allow me to share an overview of my own history of experiences to show you the influences along my own life and career path before showing you how this reflects in my work. There'll be a lot of images, so hopefully everyone can stay awake. A fairly ordinary upbringing as the youngest of 3 children with a love of outdoors, ocean, bush and lots of imagination. By far the greatest influence was my father, an artist with the West Australian newspaper for most of his career. He went on to become head of the newspaper's art department. For many years, he would produce drawings of houses and their interiors for the weekly Home of the Week feature in the newspaper. My father's own work appeared on the front pages of the paper with illustrations of the then future Narrows Bridge, the proposed Beatty Park swimming pool complex, Dumas House, the now demolished multi-storey T&G building, to name a few. He also constructed the scale model of the Commonwealth Games Athlete Stadium for the 1962 Games. The newspaper's art department included the political cartoonists, which meant that I had the honour of knowing personally the political cartoonists of the newspaper over the years. My father ventured into his own side career as a cartoonist with his Rodney series that he provided to an American newspaper for a time. Outside of my father's day job, he was constantly painting and holding art exhibitions. This took us to many country towns. He produced a series of books containing his pencil and ink drawings of historic places of Perth, Fremantle and Rottnest. He loved to research projects before he commenced the artwork. When I was 6, our family travelled to Europe by boat for a holiday. I have many memories from this trip, or perhaps I can just remember the many post-trip slide nights looking at our travel photos. Jumping forward to my days studying architecture at UWA, my first car, my first real job during the summer holidays as a brickies labourer, where I gained first-hand experience of construction sites. A few surfboards, a few student performances and competitive dress-ups. A memorable 21st birthday hippie-themed party. At a time unlike today's endless supply of photos of architectural projects, I was influenced by books on the works of Le Corbusier, Alvar Aalto, Frank Lloyd Wright, and that of the Russian constructivist. I clambered over new periodicals to catch images of new work completed by the likes of Frank Gehry, Stephen Hole, Hans Hollein and Architectonia. More dress-ups in my first job as an architect's office on finishing my studies, where I worked for 1 year before heading off to work in London. 5 fun-filled years based in London, working while taking lots of short breaks to travel. I was fortunate enough to work in a practice in conjunction with the architect Ian Ritchie. Ian started his own practice, Ian Ritchie Architects, in 1981, some 5 years earlier than my association, and earlier again at the office of Norman Foster. At the same time, he had co-founded the design engineering firm, Rice Francis Ritchie, who were responsible for the bioclimatic facades of La Villette Sciences Building, the Louvre Pyramids and sculpture courts with I.M. Pei. Ritchie's fascination with lightweight structures was evident in the project on which I was working, Hermitage Riverside. The building was a residential apartment building on the edge of the Thames in central London, in which all of the lightweight balconies were suspended from above on suspension cables. We worked on this project from the design development to the end of the documentation, and unfortunately it was not built. What was interesting to me about this experience was the determination to not deviate from the design goal and Ian Ritchie's seamless working relationship between architect, engineering and industrial design. I attended the World Architecture Festival in Amsterdam last year, where I had opportunity to sit in on one of Ian's presentations to juries of the Royal Academy of Music Recital Hall, which he completed earlier last year. It is the most exquisite building carved out of leftover spaces between historic London buildings. After his talk, I reminded him of his project on which I had worked all those years ago. He remembered the project and very kindly said that he remembered me. I don't think he actually remembered me though, really. Experiencing work in London was broken up with partying and lots of short breaks. Double denim, London digs in Brixton, and the beginnings of a romance that was to reignite later in life. A 4-week trip through Morocco and a crazy 5-week trip in my combi with 4 friends through France, Spain and Portugal. Back to work, this time on the proposed Hyatt Hotel and Conference Centre in Nairobi. An architectural experience that remained with me ever since was a visit to the Sir John Soane Museum in London, with its incredible sense of belonging for me within its rooms. These rooms, shown here in particular, evoke that feeling where you just want to stay a while. The rooms just feel right, a feeling that I now try to bring to my own work. Then back to Perth. I spent 3 years in the office of Philip Cox, Etherington, Coulter Jones, working on projects such as the Old Swan Brewery redevelopment, the Joondalup Stadium, apartment buildings, TAFE colleges, individual houses and housing subdivisions. Then 16 years, I can't believe 16 years, but yes, 16 years at the office of Overman and Zoeterveld in Perth, the last 10 of which I was a director. Here, the type of work and the experience gained was broad, designing our own new office at the time in Fitzgerald Street, as you can see here. Also designing the Upper East Side apartment building in East Perth, along with numerous other apartment and mixed-use buildings. Interiors for restaurants and apartments, resorts, hotels and day spas. Design of civic buildings, resorts and hotels. Housing subdivisions, new town centres and urban design. Through this period saw marriage and children. A pivotal time of change, the end of my marriage, which led to a reassessment of how I wanted to live my life. After 10 years as director, an end to my time at Overman and Zoeterveld, and a time to embrace new challenges, which my own boutique practice was commenced. Then shortly after, the rediscovery of an old friend who turned out to be a life partner, and then blended families. In the same way that I have just outlined what is specific to me, each new project, each new client, and each new site has things specific about them. I love bringing to life the hidden stories of place in each project, ultimately striving to provide a sense of belonging to occupants and buildings within community. Maps provide the perfect analogy here. Consider the random division of Australia into states, where there is no consideration for division geologically, climatically or culturally. Then consider just how specific the map of 260 Indigenous nations division of Australia is, each nation specific to culture, climate, geography, flora, fauna and language. Consider the opportunities to express place through materials specific to place within Western Australia, such as the limestone of the coastal southwest region, the granite of the inland Midwest regions and the Kimberley stone of the northwest. Consider and get to know local history, such as Perth's first locations of European settlement, how the introduction of infrastructure such as train lines created new localities of development, and how the location and shapes of the first land grants were a major determining factor in the layout of our current road layouts. Understand the significance of Perth wetland regions and how they were previously linked as one and served the seasonal movements of local Indigenous people. Pay respect to and be inclusive of our Indigenous culture with every opportunity. These earlier projects of mine contain the essence of what I've been talking to date. The Leederville mixed-use building, which in my mind captures the essence of Leederville. A house in John Street, Cottesloe, which pulls together aspects of Cottesloe, and Riverview, a house in Peppermint Grove that relates specifically to my clients who were combining English and Australian culture, moving back to Australia to embrace the great outdoors. The design of a new suburban home called Roscommon House. In the design of this new house and its interior, I endeavoured to make the family in the new building meld with and contribute to this unique suburb of Floreat. The garden suburb ethos greatly influenced the original design of the local area surrounding Roscommon House, as can be seen by the dark grey spaces on this map, showing open space and retained bushland. In this map, you can see red dots indicating the results of our research, identifying over 70 remaining modernist buildings. The large areas of red show the location of the 1962 Empire Games Athletic Stadium, which my father made the model of, and Athletes Village, consisting of 150 modernist houses. In search of context, we investigated the remaining original architecture of the area to find over 70 examples of modernist buildings, each near the site for our then future Roscommon House. We did a photographic survey, which you can see here. Some of the remaining original modernist buildings, which influenced my response. The construction of the 1962 Empire Games Stadium and Athletes Housing Village in the locality was an enormous influence on the development of the new housing stock in the suburbs of Floreat and City Beach. As I began the design process for Roscommon House and its interior, the iconic concrete shell structure of the local surf lifesaving building was demolished, and the local council threatened to demolish the much-loved concrete beach kiosk. I took inspiration from these buildings to promote the long-term appreciation of the suburb's built history to the local authority and the general public. I felt a responsibility to produce a design for this new house and its interior that not only served the needs and desires of my clients, but was also in conversation with the ethos of the suburb, without mimicking or replicating the past. And I must say that my clients were on board with this. It wasn't done independently of my clients' involvement. Here you can see the photographic connections between the local concrete kiosk and the popular local skate culture and skaters on the Roscommon House roof. From the street, Roscommon House presents as a sculptural play of masses, both heavy and light, transparent and solid. Simple, uncomplicated forms, as was the case with the original buildings of the area. The referencing and connections to the suburb and its history are not limited to the exterior, but run through the entire house. Here you can see the forms and vertical ribbing of the local concrete kiosk building influencing the interior cabinet work. Environmental designs drove the planning of Roscommon House, which has been teased apart to allow the winter sun and ventilation to penetrate the pocket courtyards of the building mass. These pocket courtyards also serve to reinforce the garden suburb ethos by bringing a connection to the garden into every room. Both exterior and interior habitable spaces are designed to provide a feeling of containment and to visually connect with the landscape. Semi-contained external courtyards and terrace areas provide the same feeling of containment and sense of belonging as the interior spaces. Interior spaces transition to semi-outdoor courtyards. The board-marked off-form concrete walls and ceilings slide through from the exterior to the interior. Materials have been chosen for their roughness, texture, modesty, and acceptance of beauty in ageing. Matte finished timber and honed marble add warmth to the otherwise concrete walls and ceiling surfaces of the house. Brass has been used throughout the house as though it is a thread of jewellery, adding detail and richness, which over time will age and patina like a family heirloom. The kitchen island bench evokes the sensuous curves of the local concrete beach kiosk, with its roof hovering above the ribbed walls. Walls and cabinet work blur into one. Here you can again see the iconic local concrete kiosk building that inform the shapes, textures and forms within the house's interior. This is the central space of the house where highlight windows allow winter sun to penetrate into the deepest corners. Looking up in this central void space above the stair to the custom designed pendant lights that have been integrated with the fluid forms embedded in the off-form concrete ceiling. Here the fluid nature of concrete is celebrated while referencing Perth's interconnecting chain of nearby wetlands, known by the early European settlers as the Great Lakes District, consisting of Herdsman's Lake, Lake Munga and Hyde Park, amongst others. The main living space, with its curtain fabric of Australian flora motifs, referencing the garden suburb ethos of the suburb. The colours of these curtains are then key to the colour of the furniture in the living room and dining room. Seeking reason for colour in the house, I sought the same original inspiration as that of many of the early modernist architects of the local area, Le Corbusier. The grey concrete backdrop has allowed measured introduction of the colours of blue, green and yellow into the building to enliven the home. The most intimate of the home spaces is the reading room, with its Le Corbusier-inspired colours. Details reinforcing the ethos of the project and my client's own hands and that of their children, which marks a point in time of the construction of the house embedded in the concrete. Our brief included custom designed furniture, rugs, curtains and pendants, which reinforce the underlying handmade feel of the house. I worked with the owners to source artwork from local artists for their home, along with commissioning a local sculptor. The expression of texture is consistent through all materials in the house. The master bedroom is an intimate space with robust texture of the grey off-form concrete, contrasted with the warmth of the timber and the colour of the fabrics. I say my clients were passionate about grey concrete, which did form part of the brief, and I didn't have to impose that on them. It was a matter of working with the grey concrete to make a warm family home. So it was more of a challenge than it was, well, as much as it was exciting for an architect to be told we're working with grey concrete. The timber batten acoustic ceiling of the ensuite reduces the clatter and noise, along with bringing warmth and colour. The combination of gloss and matte wall tiles, as can be seen in the reflection in the mirrors, appear as a tapestry, further emphasising the handmade. Here again, the local concrete kiosk building has influenced the form of the vanity. On completion of the house, the feedback from our clients and the community has been fantastic, as there was a clear understanding that this house fits in with their suburb. Cloud House. This is a design of a new holiday house. The design of Cloud House strives to achieve a sense of belonging for its owners and ground the building itself with a sense of belonging within its context. My client's challenging brief called for a versatile holiday house to accommodate their whole family, where the house provided a point of difference from their everyday suburban living. The site, with public open space on 3 sides, has significant public exposure, as it is the closest residential site to the entry point of the Mandurah Channel, which leads to the entire Peel Inlet waterway. While the house was designed for a holiday use, the design serves as an efficient and economical model for potential everyday living for multi-generational families underneath the one roof. Accommodating 4 generations of the family and sleeping 17 people at an area per person of just 29 square metres. The building is vastly more efficient than Western Australia's average house area provision of 87 square metres per person. The house is accommodated in an apartment typology where vertical zoning allows independent living. The vertical zoning allows opportunities for spaces to relate between floors to enable the family to holiday together as one if they so choose. That's one building, 4 generations of the one family on holiday by the ocean and marina. And that's about 7 photos of me photoshopped together into the top left image there. Cloud House in its setting as a bookend to the marina front houses with public open space on 3 sides. The architectural language of the building draws upon its marina and oceanside location. Challenged at the outside of the project with an existing built form around the marina that paid no respect to place or environment, I looked further afield for a starting point to the scale and robust nature of the expressed structural grid of Sydney's Finger Wharf buildings. Here you can see the building's referencing of place teased apart. This concrete exoskeleton of expressed floor slabs and columns became an honest expression of the building structure. The bold structural grid visually holds together the overlay of the other elements of referencing. Referencing to colours of nautical navigation red, green and blue provided highlights to the projecting awnings. These colours were carried through to the referencing of the nautical flags and sails in the coloured external roller blinds. Then finally the building is capped with the concrete red cloud that references the frequent dramatic sunsets over the Indian Ocean. The coloured external roller blinds resolve the building's conflict of major views to the west, while dealing with the environmental factors of the sun and wind, along with privacy from the adjacent public open space. The changing tapestry of blinds reflects the nature of the signals being sent by nautical flags. By night, the building is a navigational outpost, like a lighthouse, sending signals to the boats on the ocean entering the adjacent Mandurah Channel, which means the owners have to be careful which blinds up and down as to what message they're sending to the boats. The graphic nature of the external elevations play upon a referencing to the artwork of artist Geoffrey Smart, where the graphic qualities and the industrial and urban subject matter relates. Local artist Tony Morgan was commissioned to complete sculpture. The planning provided versatility of use for either the whole mob or just part of the family on holiday. The family zoning can be seen here in the floor plans across all levels. Living spaces became part of the balcony through full height stacking sliding doors, level thresholds and consistent floor materials to make it feel as though you're sitting on a balcony even within the living spaces. Highlight windows allow morning to midday sun to spill through the central void space, to counter the fact that the living areas all face south and west to take in the best views. The elements of belonging, being the nautical colours and the cloud referencing, follow through from the outside. Here you can see the bulkhead around the void in the shape of a cloud in itself. Timber flows from outside to the internal areas. The stairwell becomes a playful journey, reinforcing the nautical colours. The grandparent zone, which includes a sitting room that opens to its own balcony and study area, and void, which connect to the floor below. The fun continues with ceiling profiles that roll like the underside of a cloud, and a ladder leading to the grandchildren's cubby house below the main roof. The grandparents' bedroom, with its own rolling cloud ceiling and outlook through its balcony cloister. If you have ever experienced launching a boat from a public boat ramp, you'll realise that boat ramps are places of high drama and theatre. With the public boat ramp less than 50 metres away, Cloud House itself becomes part of the theatre and drama as it provides an ever-changing backdrop to the drama of the boat launching. Baseline. This is an interior design project. Baseline is the name of a hairdressing salon where I was commissioned to provide the salon owners with a new interior design fit-out. The design considers the factors of physical and sensory perception, culture and message, along with community, which are addressed, and they come together to provide a sense of belonging. The brief called for the doubling of the size of existing salon as it absorbed the adjacent tenancy, while minimising the downtime of the salon operation during construction. So how to make two separate tenancies feel like they are one. A circular plan form was devised to provide the strongest spatial unification of the two spaces. As is the case when within the protective outer walls of a castle, one feels that welcoming sense of belonging and security within. The broken circle allows people outside the circle to obtain a glimpse into the inviting inner space. The inner circle provides the positive space for the core services of the salon, the bits the clients enjoy, leaving the leftover bits for the supporting utilitarian functions. The floor plan is distinctly zoned into a hierarchy of spaces and subspaces. Shop front, reception and waiting area to the bottom of the plan, hair cutting centrally, washing of hair at the rear, storeroom to the top left and staff room to the top right hand side. The central island divides the circular space into smaller, more intimate subzones. The washing and colouring of hair takes place in the most intimate of areas at the rear of the salon. To counter the noise of the many private conversations and hair dryers, the walls of the central circular space provide acoustic attenuation. The vertical hit-and-miss timber battens of the circular walls conceal the acoustic insulation behind. The wall and cavity spaces behind these walls are packed with sound-absorbing insulation. The colour black features throughout the salon in order to make those black elements become recessive as a backdrop, resulting in the focus remaining always on the patron. Accents of colour are found throughout the salon that reference the colouring of hair, in a celebration of the creativity of the hairdressing in the salon. Wallpaper in the front of the salon draws together the colours as though they are from an artist's palette board. These colours spin out through the salon with the strands of colour in the timber battens and the block of green wallpaper as a backdrop to the rear of the salon. The timber battens represent strands of hair, with the coloured timber battens being that of coloured hair. We specified a very limited number of these coloured battens to enable the message to be there without overcomplicating the space with colour. The representation of hair starts outside the front door, with the custom designed pull handle resembling a long ponytail clasped in a metal hairband. The end of each dowel was cut at a splayed angle, and each being rotated to reinforce it being an individual strand of hair. The scattering of black vinyl planks represents the splashing of stain on the floor, which is often the case as the result of colouring of hair. The circular plan of the central hub space is further emphasised through manipulation of the ceiling using changes in ceiling height and colour. The circular plan form reinforces the concept of hub and centre, where creativity is celebrated and community can come together. We developed a system of mutual benefit to the salon owners, salon patrons, and Perth's artistic community, whereby the work of selected artists would rotate through the salon with the intention of underscoring a spirit of creativity within the salon. To date, the salon has featured the work of sculptor Denise Pepper, Trevor Richards, and sculptor Peter Zappa, where the emphasis is on exposure rather than about sales of artwork. The final ingredient was the salon's own patrons, where their long-standing community of followers embraced the new salon space. It was a good party too. Turtle House, the design of a new small urban infill house. This project is hopefully going to start on site within the next 2 months. A new house for a young family on a 195 square metre corner laneway site. The site is accessed from the 2 laneway frontages with no frontage to the street itself. A site where it is necessary to carefully design to provide respect to the neighbours from overlooking and overshadowing. Designing a house for such a site requires an unconventional design approach. Located just north of Hyde Park in North Perth, this is an area that has over time provided for our Indigenous people, the early European settlers, Chinese market gardeners, and migrants from Greek, Italian and Vietnamese communities. A design that celebrates the history and significance of its location amongst the formerly connected swamps of the Great Lakes District, previously a place of an abundance of wildlife and a place of passage and encampment for Indigenous people. The area now known as Hyde Park was referred to by the early European settlers as Third Swamp, and to the Indigenous people as Bujamuling. These fertile swamp areas were filled in by the early European settlers. Over time, these areas became market gardens populated by Perth's Chinese community. With entire areas of swamp being nibbled away and reclaimed, with roads and freeways constructed between areas of swamp, the long-necked turtle populations of the swamps are no longer able to safely migrate between watering holes. So, to the design of the house. On such a tiny site, I was mindful of the need to provide green space to avoid further built form in the former backyards of this community. The design provides an equivalent open space area of 75% of the site, 30% of the site area in tree canopy, and 55% of the site provided with deep soil planting. Looking over the back fence of most houses in this area within North Perth will reveal the productive vegetable gardens of the Greek, Italian and Vietnamese families of the area. This seemed to give all the more reason to strive to achieve green space rather than built space in this project. Locating the bedrooms at the ground floor level, which is to the left-hand side of the slide, provided intimate outlook and a perimeter belt of green. The first floor, to the right-hand side of the slide, provides for living, dining and kitchen, along with a backyard of lawn and trees at first floor. Landscaping beds of over 1 metre deep ensure that it is possible to grow relatively large trees at first floor. These deep planter beds are provided at the pivotal laneway corner, which is to the top left, thereby providing privacy to the occupants, but more importantly providing green space to the community. The planning orientates all living and outdoor entertainment areas to the north, which is to the top of the page, protected from the southwest winds and allowing winter solar penetration into the house. The central ground floor courtyard, although intimate, allows natural light, winter solar penetration and natural ventilation through the house. The courtyard also provides the ground floor master bedroom with a private outlook and allows natural ventilation, avoiding the noise and exposure to the laneway. The house, with a total area of 152 square metres, is only slightly larger than an apartment. There is no garage, not even a carport, as the family car has been provided for with an area to park over trafficable lawn adjacent to the laneway, which is to the left of the lighter green colouring on the left-hand plan. Simple yet playful use of concrete upstands and roof edges express the nibbling away of the swampland environment of the long-necked turtles of the locality. Details express the nibbling away of the concrete, like the swamplands. Delight as you look up at the building with ceiling details of references to turtles and place naming of the nearby Bouger Merling. It is intended that the landscaping will reflect the native swampland species such as the paperbark trees and reeds. Colours of the materials of the house have been chosen to complement the colour of the paperbarks, with a chalky off-white face brick and timber cladding that will be allowed to weather naturally over time to take on patina of its own. The yellow blossom of the tree will feature in the blinds that will appear and disappear, just like the blossom. So, to you all, continue to accumulate your own experiences, learn from and pay respect to history, and remain engaged and interested in the built environment. As students, you can join the Architects Institute of Australia and the Design Institute of Australia, where your enthusiasm will be welcomed and where you will make valuable connections for your future careers. Map your career pathways beyond graduation to make sure that you work towards becoming registered as an architect. Become an architectural activist and consistently promote the benefits of architecture to the wider community. And if you do nothing else, just read these books to better understand the way Aboriginal culture relates to place. Thank you.
I have a question. I would really like to comment on this. 2 weeks ago, we had ArchiTalk was into our different philosophies and management practice. But one common thing that I noticed is that definitely also a large firm like ArchiTalk has been pointing out the importance of listening to the place and trying to work in the context. And I guess that in a large practice, you can easily figure out how the notion of ego is not as central to the work of architecture. But I would like you to comment, as an owner of a boutique office, how do you see this idea of the architect as an ego who is able to drive the direction, right? I think that your conversation about the place and how to listen to the place in many ways has been quite illuminating. So I think that's a crucial point.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've done both. I've been a director of a larger practice when I was one of 4 and then 3 directors at Overman and Zoeterveld. At our peak, we had 30 people on staff. And now it's just me. And I outsource when I need people, or I work with graduates as I need. But I guess, not answering your question directly as yet, but my move was really because I enjoy all aspects of architecture. And when you're a director in a larger practice, you end up doing a component. For many years, well, as I mentioned, I did all sorts of work when I was there, but for the last few years I was an interior design director. And so I set up an interior design department, and then we employed an interior designer below me, gave direction and got all that happening. So I was doing quite specific things, and I really loved doing all aspects. So I liked that involvement, and that was part of my reason for moving. There are many others, but that was one of them. So you're more part of a team in a larger practice. You need design direction. You need someone strong or an ethos that's strong within the practice. And that's often difficult because, as with marriage, you have to be on track. You both gain experience in a marriage, and you have experiences that you come back to. But being in a partnership with other directors is sort of like being in a marriage, and sometimes you're not on the same wavelength, and sometimes you bang heads, and the message isn't always strong. I really don't know how some of these larger international practices are on song. I don't know how they do it, but for me, I'm able to send a consistent message, because what I was trying to get to with this was showing you that the work I'm doing now is a result of all of my life experiences, as it will be for you at a certain point. And, for me, my father, being an artist, was a big influence. And it influences me because I think now of building as not just building. I think of it as a piece of sculpture. Well, I've thought of that for a long time. So building is it can be conventional, but it doesn't have to be. And building is part of the landscape, part of the environment. So I think as much about landscape as I do about building. So that that's the way I
think you answered my question, because what I take from your response is that effectively it's not so much about ego in terms of egocentric design. It's much more about sharing an ethos of what this job is about. And I think that even if you're in control of all of the aspects, you have maintained that kind of ethos that you make space for.
Yeah, well, I guess in the sort of brief overview of this, what I haven't explained or talked about at all is clients. And, there's no job without a client, as I'm currently experiencing. But I really haven't mentioned much about clients, but it's all about my clients. So I've sort of glossed over that. So Roscommon House, they came to me. They wanted a board-marked grey concrete house. I did not bring that on. That was them. But they understood a little bit about the area. So it was a process of me exploring the area and sharing that with them. We were on board. We were on that whole journey together. And I kept dropping ideas, and they were on board with those ideas. And so the project is a result of that whole journey. The Cloud House was the same. They had been a previous client, but they'd gone to 2 other building designers before me and weren't satisfied. And it took me a long time to come up with planning that they were happy with. And then over that time, we developed this story again, but they were on track with that story. So it's not me sort of standing back saying, this will be like this. It's a long journey. I mean, both of those projects Roscommon House was about 3 years from start to finish, and Cloud House was about 3.5 years. So over 3.5 years is a long time to tease all these things out. And often it's a bit of a trick of me exploring further and then knowing when to tease and share with clients, because if you can't bombard them with it all at once, it's way too overwhelming. So you're doing them a favour by projecting forward in the program, but then releasing little bits of information that they can deal with. And that's an art form in itself. Doesn't always work, but that's the idea.
Thanks.
Well, I think the exciting thing is it's an architecture that investigates how to make it a unique place in Perth. Each one is a celebration of that unique location.
Yeah, and that's important to me. And I mentioned to Parissa before, I've actually been asked to speak next week at a Caesarstone function where I'm not being recorded, so I'm going to speak more openly about my thoughts on that. But I'm proud of the architectural heritage and Indigenous heritage and everything about Western Australia. I think we are the real Australia. When you think about our expanse and the incredible Indigenous culture that still exists, and Indigenous people that are happy to share that with tourism. We're a microcosm, and I think we're being bombarded by the wonderful marketing of some of the eastern states cities, such as Melbourne, who are very good at marketing design, and they've got state government to contribute money to their design world, which we don't have, and we need to better support our own local design. When I see buildings like, say it anyway, when I see buildings like the Perth Arena, and then you go to Melbourne, and then you see the South Bank Centre by the same practice, who are based in Melbourne, it's like, well, that's a bit of Melbourne. What does that say about Perth? Nothing. Why is state government, or who has encouraged the state government initially from within architecture for that to happen? I actually feel the same way about the Perth Museum, but I don't really want to go on about that because I feel too bad about everyone that's worked so hard and the people of the museum itself. There's other buildings of which escape me right now, but that's the subject matter of my talk next week, that we should be encouraging local government, state government and the wider community to support Western Australian design, not just architecture but all design, because it's not about our lack of ability, it's about our lack of opportunity.
Can I just ask, have you had an opportunity to inquire or reflect how our Indigenous community feel about our architecture?
Well, I've read a fair bit about it, and there's a lot more to read. There's a lot of information about local Indigenous culture, which I'm still embarking upon reading. I think you have to be very sensitive when designing around Indigenous culture, but the attitude that I take is that we should be mentioning Indigenous people at every opportunity rather than pretending that culture doesn't exist, as many people do. I went to an Indigenous design symposium in Sydney 2 or 3 years ago, and it was a room half this size. There was 30 people, which was a bit disappointing, and half those people were presenters. It was over 2 days, and there was interior designers, architects, landscape people, artists, photographers, dancers, all talking about their own experiences and how they see the world of arts that they deliver. And that was a life-changing experience for me. The stories were incredible, and I think that there's much of the Australian and West Australian population just turn a complete blind eye to the culture that's around us. So to answer your question, I don't know how Indigenous people would look upon my talkings about the subject matter, but I'm trying to do it in a positive way so that we accept that it exists and we encourage thoughtful responses about their culture.
Any other questions?
Neil, I just have perhaps the last question. The level of detailing in your works that you showed us is really impressive. I wonder how has been your experience with the people who basically help you in implementing your ideas, whether it's interior designers, even builders. The translation of your ideas to reality, how has been that experience for you? Has it been easy?
Yeah, well, I guess that's part of a journey. I can do now what I do now because I've had lots of experiences. And I hand draw, and I hand draw and pass it on to someone to take that, not take it further, but replicate it, because basically I draw a whole drawing, hand draw. I draw every detail virtually. And that's another reason why I like doing what I'm doing now, where it's boutique. If there's no hole in the number of projects in front of me, unfortunately, like there is now, it works really well because there's consistent backup of work and I can get through it in time to, have a successful career and then have very happy clients because I know what's happening with every aspect of the building. But the thing I like best is to deal with the people who are physically building it. So if you think about the process, you have a vision, and you're putting on paper that vision, which starts pretty loosely and it becomes tighter and tighter. But then you have to go to the construction stage, so that might be 12 months at best, depending on the scale of the project, 18 months, 2 years before you get onto site. So the ideas that you've documented started 2 years ago, and the way you work, everything sort of evolves. And you haven't had contact. You would speak to specialists at the time when you're documenting, but you haven't had one-on-one with the people physically making it. So when you get on site, that's the part I like best. I don't leave anything unresolved. It's all documented. It's all contractually sound. But when you're on site, you talk with people, and if you're confident in yourself and you're not being protective, then you say, well, what do you think? Is this the good way to do this? And they'll either go, well, I don't really care, or I think it's a better way. And I'm happy to work with the people who are physically building it, so long as the end goal is where we want to be. We're not compromising. We're not saving money for the purpose of saving money. If there's cost savings, yeah, we'll take it, so long as we get to the end point that we want. And that's the bit that I enjoy the most. And we had conversations like that in Roscommon House. It was quite collaborative. And there were things that I had documented to a point, and then we reviewed and we modified for a better outcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.